Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome you to our brief history of Tel Azekah towards the 10th excavation season at the site. I want to start by saying that archaeology is a field that requires a lot of patience. We cannot dig too fast because then we will lose information and we will not be able to control the dig well enough. It is also impossible, at least for us, to dig more than 20 days in a season, and this is what we do every year. The amount of finds and the information that emerges from each excavation season is so large that it takes a lot of time to record, process, research, and at the end, also to publish all the finds. The finds from each area should be placed in its proper context, both in terms of the overall picture of the site within the space, in terms of the ability to synchronize between the different phases in the different areas, and in terms of the chronological phases in each area in a diachronic dimension. Tel Azekah opens before us slowly and reveals more and more of its secrets. We understand each season better where to dig, how much to dig, and where to stop because we reached layers that we already know. Until now, 15 MA theses were already written on Tel Azekah and its finds, submitted and approved, and 9 more are in the process of research and writing. All in all, we have 24 MA theses. It was part of 3 PhDs that were submitted, and it's now in the process or in the center of 3 more PhDs. 17 scientific papers were published already by us on different finds from the site and on different aspects concerning our studies. And all of it is only the beginning because there are many more studies on the way. And we are in the very near future, we'll start working on the official final reports on areas and subjects that we completed. For the first time since we began to excavate in Tel Azekah 10 years ago, we can connect all the different phases that were exposed in the various areas into a unified stratigraphic image. And this image will be presented in 2 minutes by Dr. Sabine Kleiman, the field director of the excavation. Immediately after Sabine and Helena Roth will present a paper and a lecture that we will soon present at a virtual conference on the Bronze Age around the world from South America to China that is going to be held virtually in Hong Kong. And then Professor Manfred Oeming, the co-director of the excavation, will present a broad picture of the coins, the contribution of the coins to our understanding of the history of Azekah from the Persian period onwards. Following these 3 lectures, the area supervisors will present the main results from the excavations, the meaning of the finds, and the plans for the coming season in the areas in a series of 5 minutes lecture, so that the broad picture will be presented both from above and from below. It will be an interesting hour, and we hope to see many of you joining us in the field for the upcoming season that we're going to begin on Sunday, July 17th. This will be our 10th season in Tel Azekah, and we're looking, if we're looking at the graph of the continuous improvements of the finds and interests in the sites, I'm sure that this is going to be the most amazing season. So this is the time to start the academic part of this conference, and I'm very happy to present Sabine and ask Sabine to present the stratigraphy of Tel Azekah. Sabine.
Thank you very much, Oded. I would like to share my screen. So, perfect.
Sabine?
And now it's on. So, you see my screen well and you hear me all well?
Yes.
Perfect, perfect. Then welcome also from my side. My name is Sabine Kleiman. I'm currently residing in Tübingen University at the theological faculty there. And I'm since last season the field director of Tel Azekah, and as like supervising positions already from the very start of the very first season. And 10 years of excavations are behind us, and this is what brought us the strength and the bravery now to translate all our results into a final main stratigraphy of the site, which includes all the finds from all the areas and brings us from the aerial level of the phases to the bigger site level. And this is what I want to present to you today, very quick. I will run with you through like 9 phases from the early Bronze Age until the Roman period, because this is the last period we have very nice architectural finds. And I will go with you, though, now in the next 10 minutes in high speed, light speed almost, through 3,000 years of occupational history of the site, which will provide you a kind of a stable backbone for the lectures, which will come now after me. So the first period at Tel Azekah is our stratum 9, which is the early Bronze Age. Today we have only fill deposits from the southern western slopes, which you see here, the ceramic displayed, but we have also a very nice and exceptional find of a donkey burial. But about this you will hear more in the lecture from Alexandra Wrathall. Continuing now to our stratum 8, the Middle Bronze Age. On the top of the Tel, we didn't find any occupational layers yet, because we basically didn't just reach this this depth yet, but on the slopes we revealed massive architecture, and this will also be very much detailed in our lecture, which will follow us by Helena Roth, and I want to leave you with a cliffhanger here and waiting to come in the next 10 minutes. The Late Bronze Age, stratum 7, is the most extensive period which was exposed to date at Tel Azekah and was found at almost all the excavated areas. It reached even on the lower plateau, which you have here marked in red, in area S2, where we have even there architectural remains. We have, that means we expanded on the entire site with amazing architecture. Again, here, you have to wait a little bit patience for the lecture to come, and I will tell you about it myself in the coming lecture. But what I can tell you already now is that the site was, in the end of the Late Bronze Age, in the end of stratum 7, suffered a fiery destruction of the entire site, which left the place abandoned for about 200 years. The mass of data we have from this destruction is best expressed in the multiple articles which were already published on this topic, ranging from pottery analysis over C14 amulets to the human remains, which were studied also in MA thesis, but already published in a very nice article by Karl Behrendt. Now, moving on to the Iron Age, when coming to Azekah, we expected to find a rich Iron Age occupation because of its mentioning in biblical and extra-biblical sources. And here you can see in front of you an ostrakon, which was actually composed at Lachish, just before it got captured by the Babylonians in 586. The text details the panic the people were seeing with all the destruction around them, and reads at the very end, "For we cannot see anymore the fire signals of Azekah." Interestingly, however, to understand the occupation at Azekah during the Iron Age from an archaeological point of view is to date one of our most still challenging tasks from the finds we have by now. So this starts already after the Iron Age 1, where I told you we have a gap, that from the Iron Age 2A, we have very little remains, like not really architecture until now, but what we have are foundation deposits, which probably mark the return to the site, maybe even only in the very end of the Iron Age 2A. What we have from the Iron Age 2B is now much more impressive from the finds, which is the first is the very nice assemblage of ceramic artifacts from a pit in area T2, which was studied by Alexandra Wrathall and was also already published in an article. And she dated this assemblage on the transitional period from the Iron Age 2A to the Iron Age 2B. In absolute numbers, this would be around the late 9th, early mid 8th century BC. When we're coming now to the architectural remains from the Iron Age 2B, we find them here and there. What you see here in the picture is actually the stairs to a nice, very impressive cistern in area S2. What we have more is the architecture from area N1, which I won't spoil you here because Josef Briffa will tell us about that in his lecture. The destruction debris, which marks the end of the Iron Age 2B at the site of level stratum 6 here, 6B here, we can see all over the areas, and is also very much characterized by a lot of lamellic stamps impressions. And this event, this destruction, is should be connected to the Assyrian campaign of 701. And we have here the reference to Azekah actually in the Assyrian text themselves, where Sennacherib describes the site as an eagle's nest with towers that project to the sky like swords. Just a quick outlook for our 2022 season to get more information about especially the Iron 2B here, but also the other Iron Age phases. We will focus the season also on the Acropolis of the Tel and try to find more structures from this period. As I said, the Iron 2B occupation was destroyed. But the site was not abandoned and continued in the Iron 2C. We have rich ceramic finds from Fils and from other areas also. And you will hear about from Josef Briffa a little bit more about the reuse of the architecture in area N1. Interestingly, the Iron Age 2C was not destroyed, and we didn't find the trace of this destruction yet. Especially interesting it is because we expected it to find because of the Ostracon I showed you earlier, which takes about Azekah actually being in some way captured by the Babylonians. Moving out now to the Persian period, our stratum 5, it changes completely. We have the occupation at the site. The houses and a lot of buildings move to the fringes, kind of making a belt of houses around the site. We find them in all areas, and it's very agricultural with granaries. We have a nice, very nice assemblages of this ceramics from this Persian period, which was analyzed by Noah Jatil in her MA thesis. From the Hellenistic period, our stratum 4, we have the big impressive fort, which was exposed by Bliss and McAllister, and we will touch probably also the edges of it in the future seasons even more. But from our own excavations, we have evidence from area S2 with the fill in the system, which you see here in the lower picture, and from area E1. And E1 shows us how the entire occupation shifted in the Hellenistic period to the eastern slope, which is very interesting. And only there it started very much to be active there. What do we have there? We have a neighborhood from the Hashmonean period, which was part of kind of a Jewish village, which you see the remains here in the picture. From the finds from the Hellenistic period here, a nice Herodian lamp and some of the stone vessels. And now to close with our Roman period at the site, until now we have architecture from in area N1, but most impressively from area E1, we have a big tower from the Roman period. Thank you very much. I hope this gave you some kind of overview, and now you have a good basis to follow the coming lectures.
Sure.
Good evening, everybody.
You should share it again with the share it again. Yes, stop share it again. No share. Yeah, this one.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Helena Roth, and in the following lecture, Sabine, Kleiman, and I will present to you a broad overview of Tel Azekah during the Bronze Ages. As a case study, Azekah provides also bigger insights into the social, political, and economic situation of the southern Levant during the second millennium. The Middle Bronze Age in the southern Levant spans over the first half of the second millennium BCE. It is characterized by the local and new development of urban networks. In a number of areas, including newly formed sites and fortresses on the Mediterranean coast, and by continuity in settlement system in the Jordan Valley. Inland Israel is slower to develop local urban systems, with some areas turned urban only at the end of the period during the Middle Bronze Age period. The Tel sites, which are resettled during the Middle Bronze Age, after a long hiatus during the preceding Intermediate Bronze Age, are characterized by monumental construction, including fortification walls, ramparts, glacis, towers, and gates. It is a time during which the early Mediterranean internationalism came to be, and a time when the Canaanite cultures formulated. The Middle Bronze Age is traditionally split into three sub-periods. We employ the traditional chronology, with the Middle Bronze Age 1 beginning in 1900 BC, the Middle Bronze Age 1-2 transition placed at 1750 BCE, and the final phase of the period in 1550 BC. However, recent radiocarbon dates advocating for an overall higher chronology for the Middle Bronze. And as the study continues, we shall see how this new time frame fits the Azekah timeline. Some of the most important Middle Bronze sites excavated in the Shephelah is Ashkelon, the main port of power of the region. Ashkelon possibly triggered the economy and growth of the entire area, with Tel Asafi, Gat, Lachish, Bet Shemesh, and Batash established later in the period. Jerusalem, located in the highlands, was settled already in the earliest phases of the Middle Bronze Age 1 prior to Ashkelon, albeit in an unknown scale. Tel Azekah is located on the highway from Ashkelon at the coast to the Judean highlands. The pear-shaped flat top that characterizes Tel Azekah is a result of landscape shaping activities in the Middle Bronze Age. Middle Bronze Age fortification elements were discovered in 6 excavation areas dug on the edges of the mound. A fortification wall that was discovered on the north and western slopes in areas N1, W2, W1, W2, and W3, as well as in the southeastern corner of the site in area S3. Other elements are watchtowers discovered on the southern slope and a large bastion in area E3 on the southeastern slope. Under the bastion, remains of a ceremonial building were uncovered in limited areas. Based on ceramic and radiocarbon analysis, we are able to reconstruct 4 subphases within the evolution of the site during the Middle Bronze Age alone. The earliest occupation of the site was during the Middle Bronze Age 1. No clear contexts of this stage were reached, and it is inferred from remains uncovered in small windows under the ceremonial building in area E3. The ceremonial building itself, the floor of which you can see at the bottom of the slide, is the earliest phase of possibly public or monumental construction at the site during the Middle Bronze Age, and is dated to the late Middle Bronze Age 1 to the late Middle Bronze Age 1, or the transition from Middle Bronze Age 1 to 2, about 1750 BCE. No in situ artifacts were discovered, and the walls were robbed. Nonetheless, the magnitude of the floors and their location on the southeastern edge of the slope overlooking the Ela Valley resonates its importance. The ceremonial building was then abandoned and sediment accumulated on its floors, which is also visible in the slide. During the Middle Bronze Age too, the site was surrounded by an inset-offset fortification wall, 2 meters wide, with a stone foundation, mud brick superstructure, and occasional incorporated towers, the likes of which was found in area N1 in the northern part of the Tel. In other places, the wall was reinforced with a glacis laid over a core stone wall, like in area W2. The wall was repaired at least once, but probably more, since thick fills were laid between each identified phase of use, raising the abutting activity surface by almost 2 meters. The floor and fills inside the tower in area N1 contained pottery dated to the Middle Bronze Age too. The latest floors were laid on top of the fortification, taking them out of use completely. The pottery from these floors is comparable to Lachish phases P4 and P3, marking its final MB2, Middle Bronze Age 2 phases. The segments of the wall enabled to suggest its complete course. Following the wall's delineation from the southeastern corner to the east, it appears that this wall deliberately left the ceremonial building extramural. Another area which was probably left unfortified is the southwestern corner of today's mound. In these two locations, we have found the fortifying elements which were added last, probably after the taking out of use of the fortification wall which were the watchtowers on the southwestern corner and the bastion on the southeastern corner. The largest and most impressive building uncovered so far is the bastion on the southeastern slope. It is characterized by its large size, measuring 15 by 20 meters, with stone-built foundation walls 1.8 to 3 meters wide, and chambers that had an average of 4 meter thick of accumulated constructional fills. This building has no parallels at the site, and only very few in the southern Levant. Much like the preceding ceremonial building, it was erected externally to the previous fortification line. It also dominated the landscape completely, visible by approach to the site from any route descending from the mountains. A cylinder seal was found just above the bastion. From a preliminary observation, we can say that the seal bears representations of 4 figures, 2 mortals depicted in the position of giving blessing, with their hands extended towards their foreheads. A female mortal figure is facing a stand. 2 deities holding a spear and a fork appear on both sides of a mortal male figure. The iconography of the seal fits Northern Levantine and Anatolian traditions of the Middle Bronze Age. This seal will be fully investigated within an MA thesis, and I thank Dr. Ido Koch for the preliminary observations of the seal. As already mentioned, the large bastion on the southeastern slope and the watchtowers on the southern slope do not connect to the fortification wall and are located externally to its suggested course. Although no floors were found in either of the structures, their relatively late date in the 17th century is inferred from radiocarbon analysis and pottery found in the foundation trenches of one of the tower's walls. The architectural changes of the fortification system during the Middle Bronze Age mirrors the shifting political situation in this period. The first phase of substantial Middle Bronze Age occupation, accompanied by monumental architecture in the shape of the ceremonial building, reflects an open environment, encouraging movement. Its visibility within the landscape and the view from it assumes movement through the Ela Valley. The second phase, during which the ceremonial building was abandoned and the top of the site was surrounded with a massive wall, The movement to and from the site was restricted. While in the final phase, the fortification wall is topped with houses, and the freestanding bastion and watchtowers were erected. This displays again an influx in movement, with no physical obstacle mitigating the movement in and out of the site, and with buildings associated with watching over the accessibility point of the Tel to its south. This pendulum of power shifting between the southeastern slope to the top of the mound and back again reflects shifts in political, social, and economic orientations of the site. These processes of opening up, closing down, and opening up again can be seen in other Tel sites in the Shephelah. The best example is Lachish, in which an enclosing Middle Bronze Age 2 wall is cancelled by a large Middle Bronze Age 3 mud brick bastion, similar in size and shape to the bastion in area E3 lower. It appears that during the Middle Bronze Age 2, the lowland sites experienced stress, which made them shut out from their surroundings by erecting and upkeeping fortification walls and by narrowing gates to pedestrian passageways, and thus limiting movement between inside and outside of the walled settlement. The erecting of enclosing fortifications and the narrowing of gates may point to stress because of a threat. The movement into and out of the walled sites, especially for wheeled carts, became harder on foot and controlled and less frequent. Therefore, the movement between sites may have been also somewhat more difficult and scarce. Generally, the region goes into a period of reduced movement of goods, peoples, and ideas, and simultaneously into an economic pause. These phenomena correspond to the gap in trade with Egypt during the Middle Bronze Age too. These processes are also reflected in the fluctuating occurrences of the decorated pottery from the red, white, and blue ware. These appear in Azekah in the early and the late phase, and are absent in the middle phase when the site is surrounded by the fortification wall. This topic of the red, white, and blue ware will be published soon within the MA thesis of Quail-Gates. In their final phase, the fortifications at Tel Azekah, as well as other monumental or public buildings in Lachish, Bet Shemesh, and Gezer, are cancelled by superimposed domestic complexes in the Middle Bronze Age 3. Simultaneously, new monumental constructions are erected, such as bastions, watchtowers, and gates, not meant for protection per se, but more as a display of power and means to oversee movement rather than restrict it. This phenomenon is best viewed from the Tel of Gezer, where a bastion identical to that of Tel Azekah was erected, and to which a wide six-spear gate was adjusted. During this period, the Middle Bronze Age 3, there is a regeneration of trade with Egypt in Ashkelon. Now I invite Sabine Kleiman to present to you the main late Bronze Age finds.
Thank you, Helena. The situation at Tel Azekah during the following period in the late Bronze Age 1 is not clear due to the limited exposure. However, the evidence from Area E3 shows that late Bronze 2 buildings directly superimposed the Middle Bronze bastion, and no fortifications had been erected. It can be mentioned further that the late Bronze Age 1 and 2 was a time of stability without destructions. This is expressed especially by the rich material culture, which can be assigned to this phase. The local ceramics were well made and decorated in bichrome colors, and the assemblages all over the site revealed large amounts of Cypriot and Mycenaean imports. Those are the more common bowls and juglets, but also more elaborated pieces like bull and anthropomorphic figurines. In addition, fragments of several large storage containers from Cyprus were uncovered. It must have taken an immense effort to transport these heavy pitoi, first by sea, and then all across the coastal plain and the inner Shephelah until Tel Azekah. Those vessels were also found in the wreckage of the Uluburun ship that was discovered close to the eastern shore of Turkey. The shipwreck, as well as the findings from Tel Azekah, vividly display the flourishing trade relations during the late Bronze Age, not only with Cyprus, but also with all the other superpowers in the Mediterranean. To one of them, to the Egyptian Empire, Tel Azekah held especially close relations. This is displayed in the many special items, like these two bifacial plugs, that were probably worn as rings and depict Egyptian gods and things. In the Shephelah and the coastal plain in general, the period is marked by continuation and growth and only small-scale destructions. These, for example, happened at Tel Batash and Bet Shemesh and might here have been caused by quarrels between the two neighbors. Tel Safi, right next to Azekah, Geza in the north, and Lachish to the south grew to immense power and held also tight relation to the Egyptian administrative system. In the end of the Late Bronze too, at the turn to the 12th century, the power of Egypt started to weaken. This development is connected with a much bigger picture of the crisis years that were felt in the entire Mediterranean and probably led to the fall of the major Late Bronze Age Shephelah sites, Tel Safi and Geza. Azekah and Lachish remained standing during the following 12th century and probably due to the power vacuum grew even more in wealth and influence. In the end of the century, Azekah was at its peak, with a rich material culture and strong international connections displayed in the many findings and the expansion of the site. At the top of the mountain, area T2, there was the location of an industrial compound. At this place, balsam or perfume once had been produced that might have been used for funerary practice or maybe to support the temple in area E. The compound belonged to an influential family that must have been very wealthy and had strong ties to the Egyptian administration. This is displayed by the many glyptic and figurative amulets found in it, but also by other rare items, like the local replica of an Egyptian-style cooking pot, a type of knife that is usually found in Egyptian graves, and the bronze tip of an Egyptian drinking straw that was used to filter beer while drinking. In the very end of the 12th century, the compound area T2, as well as the entire site, was severely destroyed, probably connected to the final withdrawal of Egypt from Canaan. Several victims testify this disastrous event, 3 women and a young man in the industrial compound alone, and many more all over the entire site. The same fate also befell Lachish in the southern Shephelah. With this destruction, the entire socio-economic system shifted. The time of the socio-political system controlled by several different city-states came to its end, and the regional center of Talmikne Ekron takes control over the Shephelah and the inner coast plain. This new situation brought again instability to the area, which is expressed especially in the new site that emerged in the Shephelah at the end of the Iron Age I. When Ekron starts to weaken, these sites start to grow and are characterized by a closed fortified settlement structure. The most prominent is Kibbutz Kayafa, just to the east of Tel Azekah. Another is Nahal Nativ, a small settlement located in its direct vicinity. Despite its small size, also this site showed an impressive thick outer wall. In this lecture, we presented an overview of the socio-political system in the southern Levant in a longue durée perspective, from the very beginning of the Middle Bronze Age throughout the Late Bronze Age until the Iron One. Tel Azekah served as an ideal case study to display the shifts in the socio-political and economic organization of the region. From its establishment as a regional center during the Middle Bronze I-II transition, Tel Azekah appears to have played a central role in the local emerging political and economic systems. It is possible that its initial growth, slightly postdating the establishment of Ashkelon, is the result of the economic opportunities created by the latter. The fluctuation in defensive construction at the site and in the region corresponds to the fluctuations of the trade of Ashkelon with Egypt. The time of political and economic stress during the 15th dynasty and the subsequent regeneration of networks is evident in the erection and use of fortification systems at Azekah as well as at other Shephelah sites. The stable socio-political and economic situation continues on in the Late Bronze Age, in which buildings were built on top of older fortification lines. This period of wealth and flourishing trade relations suffered a fatal end in the end of the Late Bronze Age, and the socio-political system of the region shifted. Just 100 years later, fortifications returned to the area, displaying the new unstable and stressful situation. This long period of relative stability at Azekah throughout the Bronze Ages can also be inferred from the near absence of destruction layers until the very end of the period, which is reflected especially in the type of finds available from these periods. While mostly architectural remains were exposed from the Embi in the beginning of the Late Bronze Age, with very little floor assemblages, indicating a long use and reuse of the buildings, the Late Bronze Age assemblages originated from the destruction layer of the of the end of the period are characterized by many small and special finds. Thank you very much to all of you.
Manfred, you are the next one. Please share your screen.
So I hope that everybody can hear me well. Oh, sorry. I have to start from the beginning. First of all, I would like to say some words about the cooperation between Tel Aviv University and the different other universities involved in this project. I'm from Heidelberg University, and many of you have been here already in this medieval. This is a Roman bridge. This is the Academy of Sciences in the castle of Heidelberg. This is our old aula, and this is the library of my university. And I must tell you that since 21 years, I have a cooperation, partnership, and friendship with Oded Lipschits, Yuval Gadot, and Josef Briffa, and Ido Koch, and some others. And all in all, I was capable to bring more than 300 students from Heidelberg to Israel, to Ramat Rachel, to Eras, to City of David, and now to Azekah. And I think it's a very important part of the identity of my university. One model is Sabine Kleiman. She started in Heidelberg and she developed from a theologian to an archaeologist. And yeah, I'm very proud for this development and very happy for this cooperation. But now to the topic, the importance of the coins. The coins are spread all over the Tel, and it's really amazing how many coins we collected during the years. It's not usual to have so many coins. I will tell you more very soon. We have 3 experienced metal detectors working with us. Yoav Fahi, but he moved now to other duties and responsibilities. We have Mati Yohananov and Yunon Horesh, who are going around and finding all these metal materials. And all of you, when you will come to join us for the excavation, will probably find a coin. We have really a lot of material in Azekah. In the field, in many cases, you can hardly recognize that this is a coin, and you cannot see what it is. But in some cases, you can already recognize by the shape what it is. Here you have a flan with this little bubble. This is Johannes Hyrkanos, and when you are bringing it to the laboratory, you will find it out. Or we found in 2014 this very huge coin. This is my hand, and you can see how big it is. It's corroded, but when it went into the lab, we found out this. And I have chosen a better preserved example. This is an image of Baal, and this is the reverse. It was minted under Ptolemy III. It has 46.6 gram and a diameter of nearly 4 centimeters. It's really a huge coin, minted in Alexandria in between 246 to 222. And we found it in Azekah. What is the meaning? we cannot say yet only by this find. We also found this silver coin, perfectly preserved. As you can see, it was in the dust. And this is one of the famous Athenian tetradrachmas with the goddess Athena in the observe. And in the reverse, you have the owl with the olive tree and the moon symbol. And you have the Greek letters, the beginning of the name Athens. This is a well-preserved example. Such a tetradrachm is about 17.2 grams and has 2.4 centimeters diameter. And yeah, this was the most famous silver coin in antiquity. It was the dollar of antiquity. The name tetradrachma is from the size. Another name is Quail-Gates. This is the Greek name for the owl, the glauks. And this coin was minted in Greece from 510 to 220 BC. Each piece is unique, and specialists can differentiate very precisely the different tetradrachmas. And yeah, one part is Athena, the other one is the owl. The owl is a very symbolic animal. It's a night animal, and therefore it can see things that others cannot. And this is the reason why the owl is a symbol of wisdom, to see things that others cannot see. And the moon, the crescent moon, is in the ancient iconography clearly Minerva, the goddess of defense war. The minting of coins was invented in Sardes by Alyattes and Croesus around 550 BCE. When the Persian took over the kingdom of Croesus, they took also over the technique of minting coins. And here is the so-called imperial coin with typical iconography. You see a king with a bow, a spear, or a dragon. You have this coin in silver. This is Siglos, and you have it in gold, Daraikos. But the problem is, in spite it was the imperial coin, we have no one found in Azekah yet, and nearly no one, not a single one, all over Israel. This is an enigma, but I'm hoping that one day we will find an example of this Persian coin. But a single coin is very nice, but it's not yet meaningful. What you need is an assemblage. You need a corpus. And this is really something that is fabulous. Up to now, we have nearly 800 pieces of hex silver and coins, which probably 600 will be identifiable and 400 will be readable. And so we decided to start and develop this material because coins are very important historical sources for the political history, for the history of economy, also for the history of religion and the history of languages. We have different inscriptions in Aramean, in Greek, in Latin. So also under this aspect, coins are important. But they develop their full significance only when they are not viewed in isolation as individual testimonies, but are placed in their coinage organizational or functional context and thus woven into a text. And it's very helpful to find hoards, because hoards contain different coins from different periods, and they are representing a little history in themselves. Up to now we found only one hoard, as you can easily see. It's a Roman one. But this is what we are looking for and hope to find more. This can help us also to resolve some problems of the late history. For sure, the minting started only in the mid-6th century and ended, not yet. We have coins until the Islamic period. And but they can help us, these coins, to understand who transformed the shape of the Tel, who built the so-called Hellenistic fortress that was already mentioned. Was it under the Ptolemies, or the Seleucids, or the Hasmoneans? The coins can probably help us to answer this question. So I will finish. I think we have a promising research project. A, to enrich the corpus during the dig and by the dig, to clean the coins and to analyze them, to photograph them, to give the measurements and the weight, and then to build a chronological catalog, which period is presented by the coins. To interpret the findings in this sequence in order for a better understanding of the history of Azekah, the political, economical, trade history, military history, and the history of architecture. And from here, maybe we can spread some light on the economy of Judah in general, and also the religious ideas represented in the iconography of the coins are very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manfred, very much. You can stop sharing. And thank you so much. We are moving now to 5 very short lectures of the area supervisor. Each one will present his area, the finds, and the plans for the future. And the first one is Dr. Josef Briffa, talking to us from Rome. And he will talk about trouble brewing from the north excavation area N1. Josef.
You are silent, Josef.
Thanks. I hope you can hear me and see me now. Yeah, I see people nodding. That's good. So welcome to Area N1 at the northern tip of the plateau of Tel Azekah. With a commanding view over the north and east valley systems, and right by the old farming road leading to the top of the site. I'm just making sure that I'm sharing the right page, to be honest. Yeah. The area was opened back in 2014 because we hoped that the strategic position could be a key to the site. And I must say our hopes were not disappointed. We have been excavating in N1 over 6 seasons, and you can see it has become quite a vast and varied area spread over 40 squares. Of course, not actively dug at the same time, but the combination of the wide area and a good understanding now of the stratigraphy has helped us to target the questions much more directly. And the site, as usual, occasionally does throw up a few surprises. Back in 2015 and 2016, we excavated a 20-meter stretch of the mud brick fortification wall with a subsequent phase in stone, providing an important element of the Middle Bronze Age fortification that Helena has already spoken about, and which also helps us understand some of the site formation processes of the site in this particular area of the Tel. At the other end, in a sense, of our chronological spectrum, in 2015, we also uncovered some structures and a kiln from the Persian period, providing a part of this part of the puzzle. And further excavation actually close to this area has shown that one of the walls, which are here marked with a white arrow, is probably Iron Age, reused in the later structure. I'll focus primarily on the Iron Age, which has been the focus of our research, especially in the last few seasons. Part of the structure that you see here was actually visible before we even broke ground in 2014. However, the shallow stratigraphy initially made it very difficult to unpack. The picture became much clearer once we identified the threshold there, the large threshold that you see with a large well-built water channel below it, which is typical of late Iron Age gateway complexes. The whole area had a paving of thick white chalk floor, suggesting an associated public plaza. The 2019 season then uncovered important remains of Iron 2B destruction in one of the rooms, quite close to this threshold, which I here mark in yellow. The destruction points to the fact that it's likely to be related to the Assyrian invasion that is known through extra-biblical and biblical sources. Last season, we continued uncovering further elements of this destruction, even though I must say we all hoped for more, but we did find destruction debris and pottery still in situ that had not been cleared when the site was rebuilt. This part that you see now is actually from N1 West. Last season, we were in also for a pleasant surprise. We had some sense that we should have been onto a structure. We had already dug the corner of a building, which here is marked in orange, and also the wall that was hiding in the bulk that here is marked in red. But what we didn't expect to uncover was a well-preserved olive oil pressing room dated to the Iron 2C. The pressing room itself ended up going out of use and was filled in at a subsequent stage rather than destroyed. We've already mentioned that we don't have evidence of Iron 2C destruction, but rather things being phased out. And must say the level of preservation of the plaster floor and the raised part of the room and in the pit was quite astonishing. That along with the stone pillars, the stone vessel in the press bed, and the number of stone anchors and pressing stones left us with no doubt as to the original purpose of the room. What was also good was that we had enough residual pottery to be able to date the place stratigraphically. So even though we had fills, we know that this is datable properly to the Iron Age. To bring things to a close, because 5 minutes is really a short while, I'd like to point out at least some of the finds that were in the area, which is rich not only in architecture and of course pottery, but even some of here a selection of finds that we have. Manfred has already spoken about the coinage. One example actually of a tetradrachm came from this area, from a sealed archaeological context, which makes it even more interesting. In an area marked by defense, of course, it should be no surprise that we did find several sling stones and as well as arrowheads. I put some examples here from the late Iron Age. We also had stamp impressions from various periods. Here, one example of a rosette type from the late Iron Age, giving us evidence of a wider administrative system. And of course, then amulets and figurines of various periods, but particularly figurines of the late Iron Age, that give us tantalizing hints of a symbolic world which the people of ancient Azekah inhabited. And looking forward to the next season, we plan to work in two areas. The squares between the area N1 West and N1 East of last year should help us understand the wider context of the olive pressing room and tell us much more about Azekah in the late Iron Age. Then in the easternmost part of the area, we need to go deeper to understand what seems to be the missing half of the Iron Age gate. So we really have great hopes for that. And finally, a word of thanks to all the many students and volunteers who dug over various seasons, and most notably this last season to my colleagues, Alex, who you will hear even later, who last season excavated and supervised in Area N1 West, as well as Danny, Itai, and Christoph, who were assistant area supervisors in the area. Thank you very much for your attention. We hope to see you in Azekah next year. Well, this year.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Hannah Rips. I was the area assistant in E3 last summer. Our area supervisor, Nitsan Shalom, could not be here for happy reasons, but I'm honored and excited to speak in her place about our wonderful area E3. For those who don't know, E3 is located on the steep eastern side of the Tel, where it overlooks the Ela Valley below. This was last year's E3 staff. Nitsan Shalom, the area supervisor for many years now, and Shachar Gopher and myself were area assistants. Excavation in this area began in 2015 in what we call E3 Lower, where the edge of a massive Middle Bronze stone bastion was excavated. And in 2018, excavation became focused a bit up the slope below the artificial acropolis created by the Hellenistic citadel. Here's a close-up of the MB structure, and above you can see one of the central late bronze walls. The primary architectural feature of E3 is the late bronze temple, our House of the Rising Sun. The temple was discovered with the appearance of several of these late bronze walls, which seem to be part of one complex, if not a single building. The prominent location on the Tel Acropolis indicated this building was meant to both see and be seen, and so this complex was likely an important one. And from the incredible amount of cultic finds and the variety of pottery types, it was determined that this complex was indeed a temple. The first find that indicated this was this bronze figurine of a seated god, most likely Baal, the storm god. Figurines are often a sign of cultic activities, and they also hint at which deities were worshipped at a certain location. Amulets and figurines of several deities have been found in E3. Many of them demonstrating the strong Egyptian influence on local material culture and cult in the late Bronze Age. For example, this amulet of the Egyptian god Bes was found last season. Certain ceramic vessels are also an indication of cult practices, and they've been found in this complex. Locally made chalices, stands, and painted vessels have been found here, but also examples of rarer imported wares like this Cypriot teapot. These imports show some of the international trade connections of late Bronze Azekah. We're also gaining some understanding about where in this complex certain activities took place. In the northern edge of the excavation, with a clear view of the valley to the east, was a massive, rounded, smooth stone that we have interpreted as an altar. It was surrounded by a ring of plastered stones, a built stone platform, and two monolithic pillars, which may have been standing stones. When we removed these surrounding elements, we uncovered an earlier phase in which a stone basin had been plastered to the altar stone. Plastered installations like this could have been used for collecting liquids during animal sacrifices or libation ceremonies, both of which were very common in this period and region. And the altar arrangement is far from being unique to Azekah. In fact, there's a contemporary temple not so far away at Tel Azekah that has a very similar setup, and so perhaps this arrangement was a regional tradition. A notable feature of the E3 altar is that it faces the sunrise. In many cultures of the ancient world, the sun and sunrise played a big role in people's daily lives, from sustaining crops to providing the light needed to see by. And so ancient people often associated the sun with the gods. Therefore, it makes sense that this altar was intentionally arranged to face the sunrise, giving additional meaning to the rituals performed here. In every place on the Tel that's been excavated, there have been signs of a devastating destruction at the end of the Late Bronze Age. Before the destruction reached E3, our temple stood tall, demanding to be seen and be part of the religious life for people on the Tel. But in the end, our temple came to the same tragic conclusion as in other areas. The building burned and collapsed, and its strong walls left behind these thick layers of mud brick and stone. And at the bottom of the destruction debris, we were surprised to find several skeletons. In 2 seasons, we uncovered the remains of 7 individuals. These are people who died, crushed by falling debris when the building was destroyed. Some of the people were standing inside the building, maybe seeking shelter under the strong temple structure. But interestingly, it seems that some of them may have been standing on the building's roof when it collapsed. We know from other sites and texts that the space on temple roofs was used for some cultic activities. We do not, however, know if these people were participating in a ritual at the time, or if maybe they ran to the roof to escape fire below. Meanwhile, next to the people here were found the remains of a goat or sheep. Whether the people brought the animal here for sacrifice in the face of oncoming destruction, or whether they brought it here seeking protection in the temple, we may never know. The walls of our LB temple were constructed on several bigger walls or platforms that may be part of an earlier phase. And this earlier phase was in turn built on the massive walls of the MB bastion. Last season, we removed the temple elements. And so now our goals for the next season are to investigate this middle phase and to look below it for the continuation of the MB bastion and its inner western edge. This may help us in the site-wide goal to clarify the nature of the MB fortification and search for signs of an MB city wall in this area. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody who has joined us so far in our tenure colloquium for the general population. It's my pleasure. My name is Alexandra Wrathall, and I am the area supervisor of Area S1, located on the south side of the Tel. As you can see, the title today is When the Breeze Blows South, Life and Death in Area S1. So before we take a second, I'd like to introduce myself. I am an Australian. However, I've been studying with Professor Lipschits for 10 years. And for anyone who is interested in getting involved in archaeology, I first came to Azekah as a volunteer, and I now speak to you 10 years later as a PhD student. So with that, let me take you on a tour. Area S1 was opened in 2012 as a major southern section of the Tel for excavation. The goal was to present a view to all the layers of site occupation through this slice, if you will. And as you can see, we work on both the plateau and the slope. Here is a view, an aerial perspective of the plateau area of excavation, wherein you can actually see the remains of the Late Bronze Age, partial walls of the Iron Age. However, the trees do make it a challenge. The main important element of the South Slope, however, is its view to the coast. If you stand here and look straight ahead, you will find Ashkelon. But many years of excavation in Area S1 have worked towards developing several amazing finds. The first is this early Bronze Age 3 discovery of 2 donkeys that were buried, each with them facing each other, the next severed, their heads broken and positioned opposite one another in a very intentional deposition. You can see here the reference to the article that's already been produced on this particular subject, wherein you can learn more about the complex ways these remains shed light on urban development, elite networks, and cultural contacts in the region. The Late Bronze Age, as you've already heard today, is a very interesting period at Tel Azekah. However, how is S1 interesting in the Late Bronze Age? Well, we're actually missing that great destruction that you've heard of so far. And so instead, we jump straight to the LB2, where we have the discovery of a huge monumental ascent, yes? So that's a fancy way of saying a wonderful walkway up the Tel, framed by walls, steps, and its positioning. The third major area we discovered is the Iron Age 2B701 context. Here it's clear to us that the area contained an industrial building evidenced by loom weights, ceramic vessels found still on the floors, and was destroyed in a huge conflagration, likely by Sennacherib, king of Assyria. And we understand the function of the room from its many, many finds that were still exactly where they were left on the day of that destruction. Here you can see several examples of the special small finds that we found in Area S1. A good archaeologist will take anything they find, but it doesn't hurt when we find something beautiful. Here you can see a blank amethyst scarab. This was recovered out of context. However, we do have a Late Bronze Age plaque figurine, often used in relation to fertility and cult. Finally, one of the important discoveries also from Area S1 is a concentric circle stamp impression. If you have read any of our director's research, you'll know the important role of stamp impressions in the understanding of the Iron Age. And this one in particular is a special mid-7th century item, which helps connect Azekah to the grand period itself. So what are we going to continue to do in S1? It kind of sounds like it's all done, but it's not. We're going to excavate the final area of Iron 2B remains that are still there. We're going to explore the mysterious sediment layers of the Late Bronze Age. We're going to consider why we're missing the LB3 and where does the LB2 really begin. And ideally, maybe we'll be able to contribute to this wonderful site-wide discussion of the Middle Bronze Age, which we're yet to discover in context in the area. What I would like to take a closing moment to say is that while we do ask questions of the dead, the team in Area S1 and at Azekah places a great emphasis on the lives of the living. A site may never be the same after you visit it, but in my experience, after a summer of excavation, just as the site itself, you too are changed. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. For those of you who just joined us, I'm Helena Roth, and in this presentation, I will present the preliminary results of Area S3. I will zoom in on the Middle Bronze Age fortification elements as they are expressed in the southeastern corner of the Tel. Area S3 was excavated in 2020 and in a mini season in 2021. It is a section dug into the southern slope of the Tel, and any person arriving at Azekah is faced with this area first. Most of the excavated area lies between the two staircases leading to the top of the Tel. In order to excavate here, we had to dig through the vehicle route leading up to the Tel. This path actually provided us with a first clue to the importance of this area. It is at this point that all modern routes leading to the top of the Tel converge. These use the modern day typography to ascend to the Tel. It is possible that convenient topography also existed at this point during antiquity, and that already in earlier times, the ascent to the top of the Tel was from this point. The works of paving of the modern vehicle road cut through a massive 2-meter thick wall protruding from the Tel. When we saw the section of this thick wall, it was clear to us that we are facing a fortification element. Being the most accessible point to the site, we hypothesized that we would find a gate. What we found was a sequence of public architecture built one on top of the other, preserving the same orientation and making up the site's acropolis. The thick wall we saw in the section continues to the east and into the slope. We can see it in the center, crossing the center of the slide. This massive stone-built wall is in fact the foundations of a Middle Bronze Age fortification wall, built partially on bedrock. This 4-meter high wall only represents the foundations of the enclosing fortification wall, which originally must have been much higher, carrying mud brick superstructure. This Middle Bronze Age wall shaped the Acropolis, and every wall built later was built atop these foundations and followed roughly their same delineation. In summer 2021, we conducted a targeted excavation in the area in order to better understand the boulder foundation we found right underneath the vehicle path, circled here in red. This structure puzzled us from the very beginning, as its angle does not, thank you, its angle does not make any sense in relation to the main feature of the area, the Middle Bronze Age fortification wall. During the week of excavations last summer, we uncovered additional better preserved courses of this structure, and we concluded that it is a Middle Bronze Age watchtower, identical to 3 others found, documented, and partially excavated on the southern slope of the Tel by the Lautenschläger expedition, as well as by Bliss and McAllister already in the end of the 19th century. The existence of this tower was unknown prior to this, and we can now reconstruct the line of watchtowers all along the southern slope of the Tel. Furthermore, the fact that the watchtower is disconnected from the wall, as are the other three watchtowers, shows that the enclosing fortification wall and the watchtowers represent two different phases of public construction at the site during the Middle Bronze, rather than one monolithic fortification system. First came the wall, then came freestanding towers replacing the wall. I remind you that these two phases follow an even earlier phase of a Middle Bronze Age construction projects in area S3 in the shape of massive crushed chalk fills. Altogether, these make up three distinct Middle Bronze Age phases, all characterized by large-scale building operations. I particularly like this photo because you can see on the side not three persons supervising the aerial photos, but actually four. Also, my then unborn child, now 4 months old. So it's like a surprise within the excavator. At the top of the Acropolis, we have found the edge of an Iron Age II building, a thick stone wall protruding from the Tel, and a paved floor abutting it, small patch of a paved floor. You can see it in the center of the photo. These are the first this is the first Iron Age, these are the first Iron Age architectural remains from the Acropolis that we have found in the Lautenschläger expedition. And it is indeed very intriguing. A complete juglet was found on the small patch of the pebble paved floor. And while this little juglet serves as the swallow that does make the summer, indicating on a preserved Iron Age assemblage of a possibly administrative building at the top of the Acropolis, the truly special find here is Daria Leiben-Graver, who since then joined our excavation team. During the summer of 2022, we aim at uncovering more of the Iron Age building on the Acropolis, uncovering more and understanding better the Middle Bronze Age fortifications in the different phases. And we continue to look for the gate at the site. This all sounds like a lot, but in fact, it has been excavated for 5 weeks in total. Here's the team which navigated the speedboat: Itai Sharir, Shai Barak, Dani Nam, Roni Sapir, Hannah Rips, and Shachar Gofer. Join us during summer 2022 for uncovering more exciting monumental architecture. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. As we move from the south to the west, I would like to welcome you to the wild, wild west of W1. My name is Abra Spiciarich, and I'm the area supervisor, along with the co-area supervisor, Maddie Quail-Gates. We've been excavating the west together for about 3 years, but it's been open since 2012. Today, I would like to present some of our incredible and unexpected finds, which was opened originally to see the entire sequence of the site, as you can see here, this long cut trench that we have. The sequence of occupation in W1 spans from the early Bronze Age, about 300 BCE, through the Hellenistic period in 200 BCE. From our excavations, it is clear that the Western Slope was most active during the Middle Bronze, Late Bronze, and Persian periods. It is during these periods that some of our most interesting finds occur, namely the Middle Bronze fortification wall, the Late Bronze pottery workshop, and the Persian period granary. One of our first finds in 2012, and also one of our oldest, is the remains of the Middle Bronze fortification wall dating to around 1700 BCE. Built atop massive stones, this wall surrounded the entire site, likely as part of a protective element and a symbol of the site's wealth. These walls are so huge, in fact, that they actually give the site its shape, as you see from Helena's work as well. They're even still very visible from the outside of the Tel. Amazingly, we also found the remains of their original mud brick, which was above the stone foundations. You can clearly see here the outline of the white plaster that held them together. This is an incredible find, as usually these simple bricks made of mud wash away when it rains. In 2019, we begin to expose our most unexpected find to date, an entire late bronze pottery workshop. When we first started to find these simple small pits and shabby walls, we had no idea what to think. But soon enough, we started to reveal an intact oven, pottery sherds, tools, and sadly the remains of a person trapped beneath the massive collapse. We realized something interesting was happening here, but had no clue what we found until a perfectly circular stone appeared. But this was no regular stone. After cleaning the stone, we realized it was actually made of two parts. And to our surprise, when we separated the two parts, we realized it was actually a potter's wheel that we had in situ. It had been sitting in the ground for almost 3,000 years before we found it. And amazingly, it still worked. Very squeaky, so I won't play the video, but it still turned on its axis. Now it was clear what we had: a pottery workshop with the tools, the wheel, and the remains of the ancient potter, still in his home all these years later. What was even more amazing is that we actually know the house number that he lived in. An ancient inscription written in the Egyptian hieratic on a storage jar refers to house number 6, or Bayit Shesh. So here we are at Azekah, thousands of years later, learning about the life of the potter in house number 6. It was at this point that the other late bronze features started to make a lot more sense. We specifically had these two very large silos that were incredibly deep, that were originally thought to belong to the Persian period, but instead they were filled with clean late bronze pottery. Also inside these storage jars and actually surrounding all the area around the the silos was strange and colorful soil. After consulting with Sabine and our ceramic experts, we realized that this was actually raw clay. So not only did we have the potter, the tools, we actually had the raw material as well. And in the spirit of archaeology, we decided to put this all to the test. We made a little oven and a little pot, and we tried to heat up some hummus, and we actually made the best hummus I've ever had in Israel that day in the field. About 500 years later, after our potter lived in the Persian period, a new monumental building was constructed in the West. This was filled with massive silos, storage jars, and seals, indicating it was an important building with clear administrative and agricultural features. Such a combination of finds suggests that this building was likely used for the storage of agricultural products, likely grain, hence our name, the Persian granary. We have several future goals, mostly relating to the expansion and understanding of our late bronze pottery workshop, which keeps getting bigger with each and every season. But we are actually very keen to get on the inside and underneath this workshop because we would really like to find the Middle Bronze domestic architecture so we can understand what daily life was during the period of massive expansion. Lastly, I would like to thank the volunteers and the students who've dug with Maddie and I over the last few years. We've always been a small but mighty band of diggers, and I want to thank everyone for their hard work, and I hope to see them all soon in the field.
Thank you very much, Abra. You can stop sharing your screen and we can go back to see people. I have here Maddie, who is the administrator of this project, beside being supervising in area W1 with Abra. And if you have any question, if you want to know something about the future excavation 2022, or if you have any question to one of the presenters, this is the time either to start talking or raise your hand. We can allow a few minutes of questions, and of course you can write to us afterwards, or you can write things in the chat. And if there are no questions, so we have some. So question to Hannah.
All right, so we have a question for Hannah in E3. Erin asks, what indicates people were standing on the roof versus inside the temple at E3, and were remains found above and also below the building debris? So Hannah's going to join us and answer this for you. Thank you for the question. So unfortunately, my answer will be rather short. We don't have a complete report from the physical anthropologist yet, but in the field, she took a look at the skeletons and at their leg bones, and she told us that the fractures that they had on their leg bones, I think it was on the femur, but I'm actually not sure, indicated a fall from a height. And the debris that was on top of these people versus the debris that was on top of the previous two skeletons that we had excavated was slightly different. So just based on that, I've made this conclusion, but also the temple layout follows a typical temple layout of this area and period that usually has a tower on one side with a staircase that goes up to the roof. So it would make sense that this temple would have a roof.
Thank you, Hannah. We have another question from John. How do you assign new volunteers to an area? Great, that's one for me. So I am the administrator of the project and I help handle assigning rooms and areas and all of this. We 100% take into consideration what you're interested in and what you're interested in doing. So if you are looking for a particular experience at an excavation, you can contact me, let me know, and we'll put you in an area which works best for what you would like. And otherwise, if you're up for anything, we'll put you wherever and you'll find something fun to do. So thank you for that question.
Another question to you.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, Lichao.
Oh. Lichao. Lichao, you asked, by finding the potter's workshop, can we say the site functioned as a pottery center? To what extent and area did the site provide its pottery? So great question. Pottery workshops appear across periods. So this is something that many of us can answer. In W1 specifically, in the late Bronze Age, we're still working that out, but we are working with petrography and all these methods to see how far spread Azekah pottery was. And in the Middle Bronze, at least we can say for sure that the site was a pottery center, with the research of myself and with Helena really showing that. So this is something that we're hoping to publish very soon, actually. So again, a very, very good question.
Yeah.
How did the potter's wheel, Lichao asks again, what's the mechanism of the potter's wheel and how did the ancient people keep it spinning? Sabine, is that a question you might want to answer? You're actually perfect for this type of question.
Unmute yourself, yes.
I answer everything on connected to pottery, at least if it's about the LB. Yeah, thank you for these questions. The potter's workshop is very exciting, and so the potter's wheel, what we found is a very exciting find because it has actually a lower and an upper pivot. Usually you find only one side, so this is very exciting, and especially in a context like in occupational debris, like we have it here, and not in a tomb or something. So what it is. So actually the round side will be sunken into the ground and the flat side will be up. On top of the flat side, you have to imagine a big, like wooden probably construction, which is also round. And this you can spin and can actually have a lot of speed, momentum to have to be able to produce a pot, to shape it. You can't, with a wheel like that, you can't do what you do in the modern days with the fast ones, just like from a lump, to shape it from a lump, but you can join coils, for example, together and have a very extremely nice vessels, including big storage jars and yes, and for the former question, in the late Bronze Age, it was most likely that Azekah support itself, mostly like all the sites, most of the sites in the Shephelah, but also its hinterland, most probably, like smaller sites there.
Question to Josef.
Yes, Josef, we have a question for you. He asks, would you consider that the water channel could lead to a cistern, that you can't imagine the people of Azekah to let the water run unused? Is there a cistern near area N to discover, maybe a cave of some sort?
Okay, actually, initially when we had found that water channel, we were suspecting that what we found as the beginning of the water channel was actually leading into the city and into a cistern. Now we know that whatever it is leading out of the edge of the Tel. We actually lose the channel, even though it's very well constructed, but at the edge of the Tel, we actually lose the water channel. So far, I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I mean, certainly within the area, the main point is to be able to drain whatever water is coming from the rain to make sure that it doesn't collapse, especially, you know, fortifications and that kind of structures. I wouldn't be surprised, but that's a question to which we do not have an answer at the moment, that outside the city, at least on the edge, on the slopes of the city, they were actually having systems to collect the water. We know that there are loads of caves and cisterns and spaces that have been studied in the past, even by Bliss and McAllister, but at least on our part, we haven't made that connection yet. But, you know, it wouldn't surprise me because, you know, water is a precious commodity. So you wouldn't want to lose all the drainage water, even though you're not preserving it within the fortified part of the city itself.
Okay, people, I see that there are no more questions. I can just invite you to follow us in our Facebook page. You can see here in the messages, you can see the address, and you can follow us in our website. You can always write to Azekah email, and you will get a very quick answer. I want to thank all of you to share with us and be with us in this small conference. And I really hope to see you with us, or at least visiting us, in our 2022 season starting in July 17. Thank you, people. See you soon.